Hey everybody, how you guys doing? This is Danny Benoit with another Squatch video of the day, and I'm gonna keep this short and sweet as usual. And for those, this is basically going for those who are starting out in the field, those who are curious and want to get involved with Bigfoot research. It's a very fun field. It's very mysterious. There's a lot to take in, especially with what's floating around on social media. You got to stay focused on one thing to start off with. What are you looking? There's always a starting point in any field that you're getting involved with. Um, I can get into a lot of detail on this, but I'm going to try to keep this short and basic and simple. And for those just getting started off, again, you need to ask yourself, what do you think you're looking for? You gotta find a subject, a species of focus that you believe that is closely related to what a Sasquatch might be. Good morning, Brandon. Well, in this field, you know, through my observations and some of the conclusions I come to believe, um, I look at Sasquatch as a primate of some species of some sort, a species of its own kind. And along with being a primate, a lot of people do not like looking at Sasquatch as a primate. Many do, and there's a lot of factors, according to in my opinion, that point towards Sasquatch being a primate, a mysterious primate. Again, a species of its own kind. So, and what I do, and this is just to give you an example, maybe a basic guide, where to go about, from there. I'm starting off again as looking at them as primate. Start studying and observing our known non-human primates: gorillas, chimpanzees, bonobos, the billy ape. These are good examples. Even the orangutan. The orangutan is a very good species because there's several species of orangutan, chimpanzees, and different types of gorillas. Some gorillas exist in cold climates. All right, you got the mountain gorillas. Um, Start looking at their behaviors. Start looking at their diets. Okay, some of their, sometimes there's behaviors that we're not aware of. But this is basic information. Some of the, research that you can do online by reading, observing, sometimes even videos. Do some Google searching, do some YouTube videos. It's basic, simple information. Um, if you know a primatologist, that's that's awesome. That's like that's a big plus right there. If you know a primatologist who studies, primates out in the wild. Jane Goodall is a good example. Ian Redmond. These are conservationists who study and have one-on-one or multiple interaction with these species that sit there in the field observing them. You know, the here's a fun little factor for those, like for the primatologists that get out in the field to observe them, like up close encounters with them, like with the mountain gorillas and other gorillas and chimpanzees. A lot of them are observed in their own natural habitat. They can be 10, 15 feet away from you. And it's easy how they can easily disappear by just a slight movement behind the foliage and they're gone. But yet they're still right there. A lot of this is related. We could compare this to Sasquatch. They could be right there and we'll never know it. That's how natural they're able to blend in their own environment. A lot of people neglect to realize this. The rock throwing, these are just some of the behaviors. It's been observed. Breaking trees' limbs. Banging on other trees, stomping on the ground, slapping on the ground. These are sounds and observations that are done with our known non-human primates. I'm just throwing out a few examples. So these are things that we can look at and consider. The whoops, the howls, primates, gorillas, chimpanzees. Mainly chimpanzees are the ones that like to get vocal. um, so these are things to think about. Little basic things. Excuse me. So what I'm getting at is, my point is, regardless of your belief in what Sasquatch might be, that's your starting point. You need to start studying the other subject, get familiar with them. On another note, as I mentioned often in the past on other field videos, when I'm out in the field, I like to talk regarding. I like to think about other species. I like to compare bears to Sasquatch in different ways, mainly their pattern, their tracks. It's very important to get well acquainted with wildlife. Get familiar with what exists in the area that you're studying and that you're researching in, that you're exploring in. These are very important pieces of information. Know what else exists there. Study them. Learn their patterns. Learn how to properly to identify their tracks. Why? Because it'll help you distinguish and set apart the unknown from the what is known. This is basic, simple information. This is where everybody needs to start. Some seasoned so-called researchers, they seriously need to step back and look and consider this, because a lot of them just, well, I'm a Bigfoot researcher because I get out in the woods. I'm a Bigfoot researcher because I look at Native Americans. You're lost in all translation, because what I'm getting at is you need to, why are you looking at Native Americans? You got to step back. You got to have a starting point that leads up to all that. Okay? I'm not trying to sound like a know-it-all, but I'm trying to keep things grounded here. I'm trying to keep things logical. So, I'm not perfect in any way, shape, or form, nor do I claim to be. However, logic. Um, thank you, Glenn. So yeah, I'm just trying to keep it simple, because there's a lot of new people in this field, a lot of new people constantly coming into this field, and I feel that all of us who've been involved with this need to with basic steps, and then everything else will everything else will fall into place. There's baby steps. There's baby steps. There's no right way or wrong way to conduct research, in my opinion. However, there is a scientific way. There is a logical way to look and be critical about everything that we do. Um, it's never safe to assume anything. It's safe to think the possibility of something, but never assume or make judgment, and do not turn opinions into facts unless it has been proven. If it has been proven and properly documented, stating that this was observed or done, then we may have a fact on our hands. But till then, everything that we observe is basically speculation. Especially if we see something that happened in our encounter, it's our story against anyone else. It's our word against another's. So, I've had an encounter. I've actually had a couple of them, but one was actually an eye physical contact. There was no physical contact, but it was I've seen with my eyes. There's been other encounters I've had, not seen but hearing, and but I could tell that story a million times. It does not make it a fact. It's my observation. So, um, yeah, there's a lot of things we need to look at and be careful. But the main thing is have fun with it. Get out in the woods. I love being out in the woods, spending time and exploring, because wildlife and nature, there's so much to discover. There's so much to understand. Sometimes never experiencing nothing, but just being out there is a learning experience all in itself. I challenge you just to get out there and explore. Take your time. You want to find tracks? Because I got people say, "Man, I want to find tracks." Take your time. You may not find them right away, but if you pay attention to the ground, if you think you see a track or impression, I'll tell you what I like to do. If there's a lot of leaves on the ground, or if you're in an area where there's a lot of pines, and you think you see tracks, impressions, carefully remove the debris away. You might get fortunate and actually see a real track there, because if there's a track there, if it's fairly fresh, you're going to see toes. You're going to see the shape of a foot with a heel, length, and everything. It's something you have to be very careful about doing, because if you remove the wrong piece of debris, and if it is a track, you're going to destroy it. I've done that before too. But a number of my tracks I found, they were hidden, and I was able to carefully remove the debris away. And that's how a lot of tracks were discovered by me. Some, yeah, were actually out in exposed mud or dirt, which was awesome. But it's a challenge to find what we consider evidence. Science does not consider tracks as evidence. Why? Because according to science, objective science, tracks can be hoaxed, which that is true. We all know that. For those who observed history with Bigfoot, tracks have been hoaxed numerous times. So has sightings. So has all these alleged video footages out there that make it challenging for us to have anything solid. Because there's a community apart from the Bigfoot community, the outside society, the non-believers, the skeptics, whatever you want to be. They already laugh and scoff at us. But then that's why we're trying to set ourselves apart from those who like to, who just tell stories without proof. Again, I could tell a story, but I don't have no proof. So it's why I don't like talking about my encounter so much. More or less from what I observe, and I like to show the tracks that I find and explain about the various structures, how they are most likely either weather based or or other wildlife is responsible. Because there's a lot of other factors out in nature. Wildlife is a big factor out there with a lot of what we find. But yet we're giving Bigfoot the credit, which is wrong. We're saying Bigfoot did this, Bigfoot did that. One is completely wrong. We're neglecting and forgetting to consider human and weather and nature, wildlife in general. So I advise you and I plead with you to be logical. Take your time. Never assume unless you could prove that what you're putting out there is a best to document it. Try your best to provide a piece of information that supports what you're sharing. So, so basically, what I'm doing here is trying to give you some basic guidance, some information to get started. So, and now we got a question right here, and I normally don't do these. I normally don't do these live, but since I got a question on here from Glenn Mink, he said, Daniel, do you think people overlook? Honestly, that's a good question, and I'm going to say yes. A lot of people do, and I've done it for the longest time. One of the last times I was out in the field with my research partner, Greg Corbin, we were investigating an area that's actually had activity. We were investigating an area that had some weird things on this trail, and was talking about her husband went on this trail with his chainsaw to clear out some down trees and some debris. And on his way out, he found a couple things that weren't there when he went in. Fresh broken trees, snapped trees. It could have been a bear, sure. But when we went up there to investigate, we found the broken tree limbs and the twisted tree. And, sure enough, after close observations, there was hair snagged inside one of the small little tree limbs. It was probably not much bigger than my finger, but it was broke down, going straight down. But inside the open break, there were snagged hairs in there. And it was a pine tree. It was a small pine sapling, and there were snagged hairs in there. Now, I compared those hairs to other hair samples I have at home, and I compared them to my black bear samples. And behold, they were a match. They were identical to the bear samples that I keep at home. I have several bear samples of hair that I have at home. Now, I have some hair samples that is totally different than the bears, and I have still yet to send that off to be tested. I do have a lab that's willing to test and to examine it, and I just have to get around to sending it out there. And so, yes, people do neglect looking at studying the broken trees, especially if it's, most likely if it's a pine, you might find other black hairs. And a lot of times it's going to be black bear, most likely. Could it be something else? Yeah, great possibility of it being anything else. So start looking around some of these tree structures, breaks and twists. You might find what was responsible for making that tree break. In my case, I found that there was a bear involved. So since my phone's about to die, I got to go plug it up. I hope this little bit of Squatch thought of the day has been informative enough to help you guys get started, and even those who've been involved, something to think about. So thank you guys again. This is Daniel Benoit, Squatch thought of the day, and please, if you have not done so, subscribe and share this around. Please take the time to share this around. My phone's going dead. So, yes, I will, Glenn. It's cold outside. I'm trying to hang in the shop as much as possible today. So, keep it squatchy, guys.